Welcome to the first tutorial of the Office 2010 suite for the Tenderloin Technology Lab. This first tutorial is going to be going over Microsoft Word 2010, particularly inserting tables into the program. Just a few things about tables and what they're used for before we get started. Tables are used in Microsoft Word to organize data or information into your blank document. They are different than spreadsheets from Excel. Excel is used more to both organize and calculate data and to create figures into your spreadsheet, which we will go through in a later tutorial. But Word is basically used for organizing data into your tables. So let's get started. First step, of course, is to open up our program. So we go to our desktop and we double click on the icon, and it opens up a blank Word document. Just a few vocabulary words before we get started as well. Tables are characterized in Word by rows and columns. Rows going across horizontally and columns going down, up and down vertically. They're also characterized by how many cells they have, and what cells are, they're the boxes in the table into which we input data. Now I'll be referring to these vocabulary words throughout the tutorial. The first step to inserting our table into Microsoft Word is to make sure our cursor is blinking where we want to insert it. So I'm going to hit enter a few times to bring my cursor down. And then I'm going to go up here to my Insert tab in my menu bar. And I'm going to go down to my table icon. The first way to insert my table is to use my drawing tool, which are these series of boxes here. And you'll notice as I scroll over my drawing tool, it will draw for me what a mock-up of it is going to be on the blank Word document. You'll also notice as I'm scrolling down my rows and across my column, it comes up on the top with a 4x6, 4x5, etc. table. Now what that means is rows by column, or columns by rows. So we have 4 columns and 6 rows. So I'm going to insert a 4x6 table. So I'm going to go down 6 rows on my drawing tool, and I'm going to go 4 columns across. I single click on the last cell and it inserts that table for me. I'm going to hit my undo button because I'm going to show you the second way to insert a table. The second way is, again, I go to my Insert tab, I go down to my table icon, and you see that there is a limit for our drawing tool of how big of a table that you can insert. So the maximum using my drawing tool is a 10x8 table, 10 columns and 8 rows. If I want to insert a larger table, I have to go down here to my Insert Table option. I single click and it brings up my Insert Table box. I then specify how many columns I want. I'm going to have 7 columns, and I change that using these 2 arrows in my table box. And I'm going to have maybe 5 rows. And then below that is what we call auto-fit behavior. What this means is Word is going to organize your table with height and width of your rows and your columns as you input data. You can change that manually, but I usually leave that at auto so that keeps it in an organized fashion as I'm inserting my data. Check my dimensions, and then I hit OK, and it inserts my table. Now before we start typing in our table, I'm going to just go through how to navigate throughout the table. The first way, of course, is to just single click with your cursor into the cell that you want to be in. The second way, and the easiest way, is to use your arrow keys on your keyboard to go right, down, left, and across. And my third way is to use my tab key on my keyboard, but my tab key only allows me to go left to right, cell by cell, row by row. So there's a little more limit with using your tab key. So I would recommend using either your cursor or your arrow keys to navigate through your table. So it's very easy to type in your table. You would just type into it just like a blank Word document. So the first cell, we're going to type in a few words. And then I'm going to hit my right arrow key to go to my next cell. And I'm going to type in some words in each of my cells in my first row. And then using again my arrow keys, I'm going to navigate down to the second row, and I'm going to insert some numbers in my first column. So now that we've inserted this data, I'm going to go through how to either select a few cells or an entire row or column to change the formatting. The first way to select a few cells is, of course, to scroll to the first cell until you get your eye cursor. You click into that cell and you hold, and you drag over to highlight just as you would in a regular Word document. I can go across, and as I'm holding down my left key on my mouse, I can also go down, and then just my first column as well. This way I can select just a few columns or a few rows or a few cells to change the formatting. Now I can also select an entire row, an entire column very easily. To select an entire row, I scroll to the very beginning of my table until I get my big white arrow. I single click before that first row, and then I can go up here to my Home tab, and I can change the font if I want, I can change the size, and I can change the color. And you'll notice too, as you're going along changing the font and the color and the size, it's going to expand your row, your height and your width of your rows and your columns to accommodate your text. Now to select an entire row, it's the same thing, or an entire column. You scroll up to the very top of that column until you get a downward pointing black arrow. I single click. Again, I selected my entire row, and I can go up here to my font, size, and color to change the font size and color and formatting of that particular column. I can also change the width of both my rows and my columns. You'll also notice as I scroll between the lines of my table, I get a double line with two arrows pointing out. If I click and hold with my left button on my mouse, and I drag across, you'll notice a dotted line comes up, and I can change the width of my column, like that. I can also change the width of my row. If I scroll to the very bottom, again I get that double line with those two arrows, and I click and I hold, and I can drag up, and I can drag down to adjust the width. The last step in this tutorial of selecting a table is to scroll up to the upper left-hand corner of the table until I get a four-sided arrow. I single click, and I can highlight that entire table.